everybody, welcome to the show. My name is Amanda Ostrander. I am a teacher-turned-homeschool mom, and this is Raising A to Z, a place where we talk about all things homeschooling. And today I'm going to talk about building your daily schedule. First off, welcome to 2025. I am so happy to be back for another season of Raising A to Z. I'm so happy to be back for another year. I want to take a real quick second to thank all of our wonderful subscribers. We've hit almost 7,000 subscribers in 2024, and I'm excited to see what we're going to do coming 2025. So thank you so much, and I can't wait to be back every single week, every Wednesday, talking about things all relating to homeschool. And we're going to dive right into that today. Today, we're going to talk about how to build your daily routine. And this kind of came out of a question, because there's a video that I have that I did last year, kind of around this time, about how to build your homeschool routine. And I kind of did it from like a weekly perspective, because that's how I build my homeschool routine, is start big, narrow it down. And I got a lot of questions. A lot of people, first off, you guys loved the video. I will put a link to it down here if you haven't seen it. But you guys love the video, but a lot of you said, okay, we got the what to do on a weekly basis, what we're doing, figure that out. But when we have these homeschool blocks where we want to sit down and do more academic seat work with our kids, how do we figure that out? How do we build that? How do we figure out what that routine is? How do we build like a smaller, building it down into a more concise daily schedule? And so that's what we're going to talk about today. When it comes to schedules, the first thing I always tell people is I cannot tell you what your schedule is going to look like. You need to kind of figure that out on your own, only because every family is unique. And I say this whenever I talk about schedules because people need to hear this. Every family is unique. Every family has different values, different things they focus on, different kids with different needs. So every family's schedule is going to look different. It's going to be unique. And that is one of the benefits of homeschooling. The trick is listening to different stories and different approaches and different ideas and using those as a sounding off or springboard to build what's going to work for you. And so that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to give you some ideas, tell you how I do it, and hopefully this will help you figure out what works for your family. So the first thing that I would recommend when you're sitting down to figure out what your daily schedule is going to look like is I do recommend you start with the week look. Like do the work and figure out what your week looks like because it's going to help you figure out what your days are going to look like. For example, do you have a day where your homeschool is going to look a little bit shorter? For example, we used to have a morning gymnastics class once a week. Obviously on those days, because we had to leave the house earlier, we couldn't do a full morning of homeschooling, so we had to do something shorter. Knowing that ahead of time, and as you're figuring out what your days are going to look like is really important. So it gives you a little bit of an idea of where you might need to be a little bit more flexible, where you might need to cut. It's also going to give you an idea of where you might need to have only one subject or do more on certain days. So being able to see what your whole kind of week looks like is important. So if you haven't done that, go to the video that I'm talking about. The link is down here. It's in the description. Watch that video and do that work first, and then come back to this one. But if you've already done that and you figured out what days you have available in your week to do homeschooling, kind of a block of time when you want to do this, this is where we start. So the next thing you want to do is figure out what you want to include in your homeschooling. Make a list of all the things you want to include on a regular basis in your homeschooling. I'm talking morning baskets, math, language, social studies, piano lessons, whatever, Latin, Bible study, whatever you want to include in your homeschooling for right now. I want you just to make a list. Include everything in there. Then we're going to take a step back and we're going to do two things. We're going to group things that can be taught as a family. That is very helpful when you can teach things as a family. So this might include things like maybe you're doing family style unit study or novel study. Maybe you guys do a morning basket. Maybe you do geography together. Whatever it is, we're going to kind of group those together. Maybe use a highlighter. And then we're going to kind of prioritize the other subjects in terms of what needs to be done on a daily basis and maybe is a bit more of a higher priority in your mind. And then what might be other subjects or topics or things that happen kind of more rotationally. Maybe you just do it once or twice a week rather than every single day. So now that you kind of have these things figured out, kind of categorized, we can start putting them into our schedule. How does this look for me? So for example, in our house, we have our morning basket. That is our family learning. And it covers, we do poetry, we do a country of the day, we do a word of the day, we do fun facts, we do read alouds. That happens first thing in the morning. We do that every single day. And it is family style. So that happens, family style is number one priority and then every single day. So it's like double duty, right? Then things that I prioritize highly is we do language every day and we do math every day. So those things are kind of higher priority. We also try to get piano practice in on a regular basis. My kids do Duolingo. And my youngest does speech therapy. So she does her speech therapy practice on a daily basis. So those are things that we kind of do daily. And then after that, we include things that happen kind of on a less frequent basis. So sometimes, for example, our unit studies, so science, social studies, those kind of things, those happen 2 to 3 times a week, depending on our schedule. So that kind of goes into that category. We do some like baking once a week. That goes into that category. Those kinds of things. So now we have our categories. Now that I have it kind of categorized into like priority, I can start slotting it into my weekly schedule in terms of like what time frames I have available. Ironically, this year we have a very nice schedule where we don't really have a lot of things in the morning. Actually, we do. I forgot about that. We do have something. So for us right now, our schedule has changed a little bit with winter because we have some new activities. And so, for example, one of the things is like on Mondays, we have a Monday morning gym time that a bunch of us homeschoolers nearby have decided to do. So we're going to the local community center to run around a gym for a couple of hours in the morning. So Monday mornings, my day is a lot shorter because we have to be at the gym by 10:30. So when you're, starting your school day around 9-ish, that doesn't really give you a ton of time. It gives us maybe like a solid hour of school time before we are like, okay, we need to make sure that we're dressed. We got our running shoes, all that kind of stuff, water, ready to go. So that's a day where I'm not going to put extra stuff. So on that kind of day, it's probably going to be like a morning basket, language, and math. That's all we're going to do on that kind of day. We're not doing piano practice even because we just don't have the time. We're probably going to that's going to be our rest day for speech therapy. Like Monday's going to be a shorter day. Tuesdays, even though we have a busy evening and afternoon kind of time, our mornings are wide open. We can sit there and do as much schooling as we want / need to do. And so we're going to sit down and we're going to do a little bit more. So we're going to do morning basket. We're going to do language. We're going to do math. This is going to be a day though, where I'm going to add in social studies or, I say social studies because that's the that we're doing, but or science, because we're going to do our unit studies. We're also going to make sure that we're doing our piano practice. They're doing their speech therapy. They're doing their Duolingo. They're going to do all those things on that kind of day. And so I just kind of go through and plunk it out through my week, which seems simple. And if you're like, if this seems too easy, that's because that's all it is. It's not complicated. You might tweak it here and there. You might find that one day is a little more difficult than another, and so you take something out. But that's basically how you make a homeschool routine. Now, I do have some tips to make this a little bit easier and for things that you might not think about, because that's why you're here, right? So here's some tips to kind of things to think about when you're planning your schedule. Number 1, don't put timestamps on things. Unless you have I need to leave the house, hard and fast rule, you don't need a timestamp on things. And to me, that's just a hard end time. If we take 10 minutes to do our morning basket on one day and it takes us 25 the next day, that's fine. If a language lesson takes, 20 minutes today and 10 minutes tomorrow, it's fine. I kind of like to go by more so of a list of have we done these things? rather than being like, okay, we're going to do this from 9:30 until 9:45. And then from 9:45 until 10:15, we're going to be doing language. And from 10:15 to, 10:45, we're doing, that is an extra level of stress that you don't need when you're homeschooling. Because first off, that's not going to be realistic. You're going to find that days are not going to be consistent that way. Some days kids are going to pick up the lesson like that. Some days they're going to need a little bit of extra practice, or maybe they're tired and they're going to give you a little bit of a harder time and they need a little bit more coaxing. Some days you are going to go on a rabbit trail and be gone into the wonderful world of Google and YouTube answering a question that you never thought you were going to see that day. That is the beauty of homeschooling, is that you have that ability to be flexible. So don't give yourself like time constraints. Typically for me, I recommend, unless you have to leave the house, which is kind of like a hard and fast end time because you got to go and that's outside of your control. Or for us, it's meal times, or kind of our like hard and fast, we're done for right now. Just kind of like go with the flow. And sometimes you're going to see like, oh, this didn't take very long today. And some days it's going to take a lot longer. And that's okay. It's all about like just how things are flowing that day, how tired kids are, what they're interested in, how quickly they pick something up. And that's okay. Taking the timestamps out of your daily schedule is going to give you a lot more breathability and a lot more flexibility and remove a lot of stress from your day. My second tip, do your family stuff first. And by that, I mean, do the stuff that you're going to do as a family style first in your day. So for example, we do a morning basket and we also do our unit study family style, which is fantastic. If you can find family style learning or do a couple one subject learning wise, it does make it a lot easier on your scheduling, on your lesson planning, when you can do one lesson and teach a large group of kids. By large group of kids, for me, that's 2 kids, but like, it's better, it's one less lesson, right? So I'm teaching one lesson instead of 2. But when I was first starting homeschooling and, coming from a teacher's background and a school background, I followed in my brain what I was taught to do, which was we start with language because that's the most important. Then we do math because that's the second most important. And then we can do all the other fun subjects. And so things like science, social studies, art, music, all those are like considered nice bonuses. And while they're important, like they're not as important as language and math. So you want to get the kids when they're fresh and ready and do those things first. And so I would do that with my kids. They would sit down and they would do their language work. They would do their math work individually because they're at 2 different grade levels. And then I would try to like get them together to do a unit study. The problem is when you have 2 kids at different levels, sometimes one finishes before the other one finishes. And then what do you do? So for example, we went through a period, especially when Zoe was much younger, when she was like in early kindergarten, like JK, she would finish like a solid 25-30 minutes before Alexi would. And so then I'm like, well, you can just kind of play on the floor here around, do an activity or something, kind of whatever you want to do while Lexi finishes up and while I'm helping her. But then it was really hard because now Zoe is distracting Lexi. So first off, there's that. But then also it was really difficult to kind of like rope Zoe back in to like, okay, I know you started a game, you started doing something fun, but like, we're going to stop now and you're going to come back and sit down and do more learning. And then Alexi would be like, I want to go play. And so it became more difficult to kind of rope them back in. So what I did was I flipped it. And so we do our morning basket and then we do our family style stuff first. So our unit study first. And this gives us the ability to because we're working as a group kind of at the same pace. So we're on track, we're all doing the same thing. And then we switch to like individual stuff. So then if Zoe goes faster than Alexi does, and then she's done her math, and then she does her math. And then if she's done, she gets to leave and go do her independent study stuff. So, we call it independent study, but like that would be their Duolingo, their piano practice. Zoe does her speech. And so she can go and start those kind of more independent things first. And then it doesn't affect Alexi's ability to get things done. So when they're done, they just move on to the next thing on their list. And then when they're done, if one of them finishes all the stuff on their list 30 minutes early, they get to go play for 30 minutes while the other one finishes up. I'm not trying to rope them back together to get on to the next thing. And that took a huge fight out of our day. And it just made our day flow so much better. So if you want to do family stuff, do it first, then do the other subjects. The next thing I would say is remember that we want to keep our lessons and our days kind of on the shorter side. Homeschooling is a lot more concentrated. And so we don't need to spend an hour doing math every day. So sometimes that is going to throw you off if you're looking at like school recommendations for timing. You're going to feel like you need to spend all day. You don't need to do that because you're giving your kids so much more concentrated instruction, concentrated time, concentrated focus on it. Their day is not being distracted by kids who need extra practice, kids who are asking 45 questions in assembly, having to get all of the workbooks handed out, picked up. You have taken all of those extra things out, and so you've concentrated their time. So we don't need to have super long lessons. We don't need to have really long blocks of time. We can take breaks in our day if we want to. If you're saying, hey, my kids only can sit and do work for 35, 40 minutes, and then we need to go for like a walk around the block, do that. There's nothing wrong with that. Go for your walk around the block and then come back and do something else. You can build the schedule that you want, and because it's concentrated, it's going to take less time. Typically the rule of thumb is about 20 to 30 minutes per grade for seat work. So if you have a first grader, you're kind of probably going to be looking at like, sometimes I feel like that might be a little bit on the low side, but that's kind of the rule of thumb. So if you have like a 30 minutes for a first grader, 15 minutes for a language activity, 15 minutes for math, and then maybe a break and then something fun, like another subject or a unit study. If you're doing kind of like 30 minutes to an hour with first grader, you're doing a lot. Same thing with the second grader. I have a second and a fourth grader, and we're kind of averaging with read alouds, morning baskets, language, math, social studies, or like a unit study. We're averaging about 2 hours of schoolwork a day, and we're getting through a lot of material. So your day is going to be shorter, and that's okay. It's totally normal when you're homeschooling. And then my last tip is aim for 4 days of schoolwork a week. Some people really we want to do 5 days. I find you can totally, if that is your plan, you can totally do 5 days. I find 5 days a lot, especially if you're doing like 5 full days. I find that giving us a day where we can kind of take a little bit of a break from school does our kids well. It gives them a little bit of a break because it's so concentrated. They have a little bit more time to focus. And it also gives me a little bit of flexibility in my week. So let's say we typically take Fridays off because we go to a homeschool jiu-jitsu class in the morning. I take the afternoon to like run errands, get groceries, go to Costco, pick up anything we need to pick up. I try to schedule like appointments. So he does our speech therapy on a Friday, like stuff like that. So it gives me a day to run errands and do those things without having to do it on the weekend or after work or feeling like trying to squeeze it in. It gives me a day in my week to kind of schedule those things. It also gives me a day that like, okay, let's say something came up and we had to take a Wednesday morning to go do a specialty appointment or whatever, and we just didn't do it. We just didn't get school that done. We can either you can totally skip it, but you can also like do a little bit Friday morning and just like, hey, we didn't do school on Wednesday. We can do a little bit Friday, just, 1 or 2 subjects before we leave. We're good. Yeah. Awesome. It gives you a little bit more options, a little bit more flexibility, and it gives you a little bit more breathing room as a parent, because we have to remember that we are living in our home with our kids and homeschooling our kids in their home. And home is an important part of that. When kids are in public school, they're not messing up the house as much. When kids are in public school, they're not eating as much. Let's be real, because the cupboard's always open. It gives you as a parent a little bit more time to take care of the house, to kind of get things organized or arranged, run errands, and it's just a really good system in my mind. So if you are starting and you're like, how many days of school? Aim for 4. 5 can be a nice bonus. Sometimes we do 5, but like 4 is a lot. So that is how I build my daily routines and schedules with my kids. I make sure that we are kind of consistently getting everything done and we're kind of flowing through our checklist of a day. I find that works really well for my kids. And hopefully this kind of gives you some ideas on how to build a great routine for you and your family. So thank you so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe, click the bell to get notifications. Make sure you follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok to see how our routine works on a daily basis. And consider becoming a member because you get some really cool bonuses, awesome coupons, early release videos, specialty videos just for you guys. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.